Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Talia, and I'm a fellow from Cohort 1, Group 1 of the Mercy Global Action Emerging Leaders Fellowship, and I will be your moderator today. This series of presentations is a culmination of the work of the past 18 months. It's a very exciting opportunity for all of us in the Mercy Global Action Emerging Leaders Fellowship to share our research presentations, to be in conversation with you all today. This is the 8th of the 9 presentations, and we are very pleased to see participants from across the world. Thank you all for tuning in. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. This Zoom session has been selected as a meeting rather than a webinar. This allows the presenter and attendee to see each other. You may want to choose the view today for today's research presentation in the presenter view rather than the gallery view. This allows you to see the presenter rather than all of the attendees. This option can be selected in the top right-hand corner of your screen. This is also a reminder to please be respectful of our presenter and mute yourselves during the presentation. We hope this presentation is interactive, so feel free to submit any questions or comments in the chat box during the discussion, knowing that we will have about 10 minutes after our conversation or presentation today for questions and answers. Finally, we want to remind you that this presentation is being recorded for future viewing on the Mercy World website. Today, we will be diving into the theme of harvesting solutions, examining the relationship between population growth and sustainable food system. And our presenter today is Dominique Marendy, and you may hear some of us affectionately refer to as Dom. So Dom, the floor is yours. Oh, I forgot to tell you a little bit about it. A little bit about who Dom is. Dominique lives in Orange, New South Wales, Australia. She is currently working with animal biosecurity. Through both her career and vocations, she has developed a strong passion for positive social change, as well as empowering others to find meaningful ways to contribute. One of Dominique's greatest achievements was receiving an award for her commitment to advocate for children with disabilities. Following attendance at Mercy School in Sydney, Dominique has maintained a connection with Mercy International Association through her continued involvement in social justice initiatives of the local Mercy Action Group Network and Mercy Global Presence. She has a great interest in developing as a researcher in order to tackle issues surrounding local food insecurity. And now we will have the treat of having our presenter enlighten us today. Dom, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Ty, for that warm introduction. I just wanted to start off by saying how excited I am to be here today. Not just to share my research with you, but to celebrate the incredible women that I have had the absolute privilege of sharing this journey with over the past 18 months. And how lucky we are to have Cohort 1, who after 3-4 years late have finally made it here to Captain and colleagues' house. So it's just such a special moment to be here with you all today. And thank you for coming and attending my presentation on harvesting solutions. So before I get into my project, I wanted to start and give you a bit more of a background about this. I'm really passionate about agriculture and the opportunity to work in agriculture at the forefront of providing solutions to global food security. So obviously a really big influence in why I've done this project. So back in 2020, I had the privilege of also being involved in the Global Presence Mercy Global Presence project, where I wrote an article that was about compassion fatigue and how it's made worse by the catastrophized images that we see of the world in the media. And this was largely influenced by a book I read called Factfulness by Hans Rosling. And what I really love about this book is it emphasizes that we can use facts to actually empower us to see that change is possible and to be more effective in how we address change. So at the heart of this project is the everlasting spirit of mercy. Catherine McCauley believed really strongly in uplifting people to create change and to help vulnerable people feel empowered in their community. And at the end of the day, when we suffer a food security crisis, it's our most vulnerable who are the first to experience consequences. So when we talk about the growing global population and food sustainability, the idea of tackling it can seem as daunting as riding a unicycle across a tightrope. And that's where my project comes in. So the aims of my project were to use data-driven facts to help people feel that change is possible. It's to allow people to act in a way that's authentic to them, not to tell you how to live your lives, but rather provide you with a range of opportunities so you can pick what works in your lifestyle. And finally, it's to highlight the diversity of people already working in this space so that you can feel represented. And that brings me to the guide. So the guide is an introduction. It highlights basic trends and again, provides solutions and the amazing work that women are doing in this space. So the guide starts off in the introduction looking at the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. And as you can see here, the guide breaks down the goals that work in with this space. And you can see just the number and the interrelatedness of all the different goals that fit into food sustainability and a growing global population. Next, we look at what does a growing global population mean? And we break down the trends over time. So prior to the 19th century, the population growth was fairly stable. We didn't see much of a shift except when we had major pandemics or war. Moving into the 20th century, that's when we really started to see a change in the rate of global population growth. And this peaked in the 1960s at a rate of 2% per year. And actually, since then, it's more than halved, and it sits at more about 0.8% growth per year. So, and it's continuing to decline. This means that population growth is continuing to grow, but at a much slower pace. So population growth is often not a result of more babies being born. In fact, it's a result of better healthcare, improved living conditions, and reduced infant mortality. It's really important to note as well that where population growth remains stable or the population number remains stable, it's in areas where women have access to equal education. And this means that birth rates remain stable or at what's considered a replacement rate of 2.5 babies per woman. So next, and importantly, we look at population growth rate at the present and how this varies by region. And what are the drivers in each region that affects this? So this can include things like migration, increased birth rates or decreased birth rates, and also, again, life expectancy. Next, as we start to move across from our global growing population and into our food security and food sustainability issues, we look at the challenges that a growing global population creates. This includes food security, resource security, urbanization and infrastructure, environmental impacts, and health and social issues. But we also look at the opportunities, including economic growth, cultural diversity and exchange, innovation and technological advancement, social progress and development. Next, we look at the seeds of demand created by a growing population. We break down increased food requirements, environmental impacts, challenges of dietary patterns, agricultural infrastructure required, urbanisation and dietary shifts, nutrient deficient diets, and food security concerns. So what is a sustainable food system? The United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization defines it as a food system that delivers food security and nutrition for all in such a way that economic, social, and environmental bases to generate food security and nutrition for future generations are not compromised. The guide then explores the key principles of this, including environmental stewardship, social equality, economic viability, health and nutrition, resilience and adaptability, and collaboration and knowledge sharing. We then look at examples of sustainable food initiatives. So these can include things like agroforestry, carbon farming, permaculture, hydroponics, and reduced food waste. It's really important that the guide explains both the pros and cons of these different initiatives, and that there is an ideal state in which these can each be used, and it's not a one-fits-all solution. So as an example, agroforestry is the idea that crops and livestock can be produced in amongst a natural environment of trees. The pros of agroforestry include the increased opportunity for biodiversity and habitat preservation, the improvement to soil health, the ability to increase carbon sequestration and mitigate climate change, and then the diverse income streams it can generate, as well as microclimate regulation. The cons of agroforestry is the management complexity. Obviously, you can't get big machinery in to move through and harvest your crops, and so it becomes a lot more labour intensive. You also have an initial investment, which can make lower socioeconomic groups harder to integrate these strategies. There's also market challenges because we can't produce high volumes of food and provide to big wholesalers. So the best use for agroforestry is for marginal or degraded lands, for small-scale farming, for watershed or conservation areas, and for climate vulnerable regions. The guide next breaks down the proactive things that we can all do to contribute to these issues. These include what you can do, what your community can do, and what you can ask your government to do. So when we look at what you can do, the guide looks at things like practical sustainable consumption, growing your own food, and support sustainable farming. I want to highlight here that in this section of my project, I actually make links to impact investing, which was a project by one of cohort one's, Jemima Walsh. And I did this both with intention and permission. Because I believe really strongly in this program and the fact that at the end, with multiple cohorts eventually having gone through, we're going to have a really intricate web of projects coming from different perspectives, voices, and talents that all contribute to our collective concerns. I also looked at what your community can do. So examples of this are establishing community gardens, implementing food rescue programs, and promoting sustainable food education. And also, what can we ask our governments to do? Sustainable agricultural policy, invest in research and development, and establish food reduction targets, establish food waste reduction targets. So seeing yourself in the picture was really important for me to highlight the amazing work being done by women in this space. Women make up such a big proportion of agriculture, and they're often at the forefront of conservation efforts and sustainable production initiatives. In fact, there's a podcaster in Australia who runs a podcast called Humans for Agriculture, And he often says that when he's looking for people to interview, it's often the women that are out there leading the charge, and it's the men that need to step up and catch up to our initiatives. So in the guide, I highlight the work of 20 women from all over the world and how they're contributing to these issues. And my hope is that any woman who picks up this guide can pick it up and see someone think of themselves and feel empowered to create change. So some examples are Sharon Mitchell, who was born and raised on Penobscot Indian Reservation. She runs the Land Peace Organization, an organization dedicated to the global protection of Indigenous land and water rights and preservation of their Indigenous way of life. And Camille Goldstein-Hendry, a Kamilaroi woman from Australia, who runs a system called Exilo Systems, which is a cloud-based data and AI platform that supports biodiversity conservation. So, harvesting the insights of my project. It's one thing to write a guide, but I wasn't sure how I was going to make sure it was going to be utilised by the community. And so I created a bunch of discussion guides. So there's 2 discussion guides. One is a theological discussion guide, which encourages groups to talk about how they can use mercy and a merciful spirit in tackling these issues. And the second are fact-based or educational guides that can be used in schools in geography or social science classes. So thank you so much for attending my presentation. I also want to take the time to acknowledge the hard work of the MELF team, my fellow fellows, my mentors, and also the Sisters of Mercy at Parramatta who supported me in attending this. Thank you.